everyone, I'm Benj Gershman. This is What Could Be Bad. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very special guest who I love dearly and I've known for decades now. This is Stephen Kellogg. And to know Stephen Kellogg, you got to understand this is a true artist. This man lives, sleeps, breathes, bleeds, the whole thing, everything, music, art, and emoting. All right. He is the essence of what an artist should be. He speaks from the heart and only from the heart. And I have the utmost respect for him. I'm honored that you're here to chat with me. This podcast is a new idea. It's still forming. And, what I was hoping for when I started was that I could have real conversations with real people and get into the deepest parts of what makes them who they are and talk about the challenges they face and how they deal with them. And, I've known you through all these years and you've done some incredible things. But before we start, I just want to highlight two amazing things that you've done. And then we'll dive all the way in. But Objects in the Mirror is a must read. Please go enjoy this book. It is a really introspective look at just getting through life, recognizing that as good as you want to have things, like life is imperfect and you got to deal with it. And there's still a lot of beauty out there to enjoy. So Objects in the Mirror, must read. And Keep It Up, Kid is a phenomenal piece of music. It's an album, which, there's supposed to be albums in the world. There's not always anymore. And I'm really happy you're still making them. I love listening to your music and feeling it in my heart, in my bones, in my soul. And that's the only way your music hits me is fully. So I'm really grateful that we can just communicate because I feel like you have a lot to say.
Well, right now I'm just enjoying listening to you say nice things about me. So,
okay.
Yeah, you take all the time you need with that, but no, I'm glad.
The show's called What Could Be Bad, but I'm not going to say any bad stuff about you, buddy. No, I mean, it's an important thing for me in this show. I'm trying to kind of show the breadth of the whole music industry, the entertainment industry also, and speak to the challenges within it. And you haven't had it. No,
no challenges.
No challenges at all. I've seen you through the different eras of your life as an artist. I feel like I met you when it's SK and the Sixers, and that was 20 plus years ago, pretty much, or close to that.
Yeah, probably 2004 probably was our first time.
Exactly. Yeah, it was exactly 20
February 5th, 2005. Might have been Detroit, might have been the first date.
Yeah.
That's pretty darn close.
Yeah, it's right around there.
Yeah.
I mean, that I feel like that was a different lifetime, for me at least.
Yeah.
And I am like a completely different person now for a lot of reasons. Some of them why I'm actually doing this show at this point. But I mean, I try to kind of like talk about a lot of things in a little bit of time, but you're someone who I know can tell excellent stories. I mean, you're like my favorite lyricist.
Thank you, man.
In the modern era. And, that's saying a lot because my brother Mark is another incredible writer. Yeah. And you guys collaborate, which is, phenomenal for our music that we've gotten to write with you and have songs that your stamp is on as well. Looking forward to more of those.
Me too.
Yeah.
Love those.
Good. All right. So let me ask some questions here. That's what this thing is, right? When you started making music, what was it that drew you to making music?
Well, I think the sensation of walking into, the first concert was for me was Whitesnake and Great White. And, and you have one of those aha moments where you're like, whoa, I feel something. Like it's like a little surge through your body. Right. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I considered that it was a viable profession at that point. And where I grew up, everybody and their brother wanted to say, well, what's your real plan? What's your fallback? And, that's a hard living and stuff, which I always take issue with because I don't think we say that to someone that says they want to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever,
Yeah.
I want to go into finance. You know that those are long hours. Like you don't immediately try to discourage people, but for whatever reason with art, I think there is a tendency to go, you can't do that. So I really didn't think it was a real possibility. But I definitely felt, hindsight, I just always drawing drum sets and guitars and microphones on notebooks in junior high. And and one other little thing is I just found a clip from one of those first tours that we did together.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was in Detroit or Kansas City or somewhere in those theaters,
Uh-huh.
And for me, those were some of the first really proper rock concerts I got to be a part of. I played clubs, but to go into sold out theaters with you guys, and we would always do songs together. And I showed that to my younger daughters recently, and they just couldn't believe it because we were kids. Like I was closer to their age now, than that age is to me now.
Yeah.
And them seeing it and realizing like, whoa, that's like even though they've seen me play rock concerts, something about seeing a young version of me, it was almost like for them, it clicked in this way of like, that looks like a fun thing, And I think that was kind of the doorway into music.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I love that it was Whitesnake that could bring you there because, to me, your music is very different than that whole, like glam era
80s
of music. Yeah, it's so different. But obviously, like music can be inspiring, and then you can take yours in a different direction. But yours is acoustically driven.
Well, it was the entertainment value. I
Okay.
think of that era. In some ways, I feel like we lost that. In the 90s, it became cool to not have any flash.
Yeah.
And now I think it's being embraced a little bit more again. But I had definitely, my dad used to put me to bed to the album Cat Stevens' Tea for the Tillerman album. It's a beautiful record.
Yeah.
Very depressing.
Yeah.
Really heavy.
Wake up with some heavy dreams.
I'm kind of like, was I not a melancholy person? And then my dad drilled it into me with Jackson Brown, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Jim Croce, because that's what I listened to. And that definitely all got into my music. But then the entertainment value of Van Halen and Whitesnake and Tesla, all those concerts that I went to early on, it was such a good show.
Yeah.
And I think if you in some ways, if you look at the music that I made, it's like I want it to be a great show, but I do want the music to be weighty and serious, even more so now than I did when I was starting out. But I think that's the mix, and that's what I got from those 80s.
Yeah, I can see that. The entertainment of that is on another level, and that would be an inspiring thing as a young person. But so when you're back there in that time frame and you're beginning to write and get into all this, how did you feel going out and doing it? Was it a catharsis? Was it sort of like it made you feel right? What was it about actual music performance that continued to draw you towards it?
Well, at the very beginning, and I've been thinking a lot about the very beginning because a friend of mine recently passed away last week.
I'm sorry.
She went to that first Whitesnake concert with me.
Are you serious?
Yeah, she was kind of like, for junior high, she was my first love,
Okay.
And she came, I remember, to the first concert I ever played. My freshman year, I played the teen center with my rock band.
Mm-hmm.
And I was remembering that after the concert, she's like, you're really good. Like, I like your voice. And she hadn't really paid me a lot of attention in a couple of years. Like, it was kind of like 6th and 7th were our years. And then we were friendly, but then she was there. And I still, I'm sure in my young way, loved her. Mm-hmm. And so I've been thinking a lot about that first concert at this exact moment that we're taping this chat and what it meant. And I think when I started out, that first concert, it was really pure. It was like, wow, I'm getting to do it. And I'm getting positive feedback from people whose love and attention I want. and I could make a joke about that and be like, girls,
That's a part of things.
it was definitely part of the motivation, but it was like in that very first concert, it felt like that. And almost immediately it became something that was stressful for me, but that I had to do.
Okay.
And it has remained that way, I would say, until the last few years.
Yeah.
It was only in the last few years that I stopped feeling like I was going on stage and needed everybody to like me. I had to win people over. I had to execute the concert correctly. It was very stressful, rewarding, but I had fun after the concerts for the most part. It was like, whew, okay, we did it.
Yeah.
And that's makes me a little sad, because some of those times when I look at the video, I'm like, dude, that was a lot of fun to be having and not be able to be present for it because you were worried about doing it correctly or like, but that's just the truth. And I still am that way sometimes, but increasingly I'm trying to accept it. It doesn't have to be, I don't have to be great every night. I can go out and try my absolute best and beautiful things will happen. And if I can just kind of accept that and accept myself, but you feel like if I don't do the best job I've ever done, like people won't like me and they won't come back. I won't be able to take care of my family. And it's unfortunate to me that right after that first concert, that intensity and compulsion almost began.
Yeah.
And it lasted for more than 3 decades.
But I mean, how can it not? Right? Like, I think we all want feedback. We all want recognition. We all want to know we're connecting with the people that are listening. Because, I mean, we can't do it without them. Shit falls apart if there's no butts in the seats, one way or another. Can't continue. But that pressure is the challenge, right? Is like to enjoy and to know it's special. And, those people who said, "Oh, you're never gonna make it in the music business," like that stuff. It's also like, well, fuck you. I'm gonna figure it out and keep going and find my way through this ocean of sharks and all that.
My perception of you is that you're probably better at this than I am. But tell me if you are. Do you, when you're in the middle of a great show, do you ever breathe and look out and go, like, I'm connected to this moment?
Yes, I do, and it's not like an all the time thing though. Like there are nights where I'm having challenges of like, being distracted by an inner monologue that has nothing to do with the performance. What's going on with my family at home? As I know you understand. I mean, I have 1 kid and you've got four lovely daughters. And it's when it is like be in the moment, it is very, like, I am very present and I am very like clear on that, but it's not always easy to get there. And there's also like environmental things going on at shows that are really challenging to deal with a lot of times. I think that people don't recognize like how, like, you're supposed to stay happy and like in it and like totally good and nothing's pulling you from that, right? But like your monitors could be fucking terrible. You could have feedback going on that nobody can hear or see, but is like directly in your ear and deafening, or like some technical difficulty and you can't hear your guitar anymore, or your vocals drop out. Or for me, like, I stand on a platform so I can feel the bass and it doesn't affect how Mark sings. So we don't need a huge amp behind me. It's just going up and not out. And then like that thing goes out and then I'm just like floating in space with no bass, which was also a odd metaphor for a nightmare I probably will have now. But like, it's, I think to answer your question, yes, I'm there, but I'm not always there. But I want to be there at every show.
That's the goal.
Yeah, right. Is like where you're like so deeply entrenched in the performance, in the connection, not only with like yourself and like doing it the right way, but like for the
you're on the high wire and you're like, wow, I'm on a high wire right now. This is cool. Like if you can have that moment that isn't looking down and losing your balance, it's just acknowledging the magic of what we get to do,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But that's really rare with me. And I think, but it's an aspirational thing. I mean,
Okay.
I want to have that more. And I think when you have that, it's like your way of knowing you're doing the right thing in this moment. If you can have those moments where you're like,
Yeah, but why isn't it right to be so hyper focused on like getting things to happen the way you want? What's hard about that?
it's not what I would call fun.
Okay.
You know, the fun, Kirsten,
but it's
my
also-
wife says,
yeah.
you like type 2 fun, Stephen. And she's right. Like,
Yeah.
I like things after they've happened.
Uh-huh.
I like sitting down and having a drink and a steak and talking about, whoa, we just did that. That's fun.
Yeah.
That's like fun. The actual moment, you're playing, you know, even when I'm in a club, like I'm playing the Super Bowl every night. And if I'm going to lose that game, it's not fun.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Or making a big mistake, you know.
Oh, dude, I hate it. Mistakes are hard to get over. Too.
You don't want to do that, and in the way that I do it, like you guys, it's different every night. You're painting a different canvas every night, which I love, but also, you know, it's perfection is pretty much never. That's not likely to happen when you're reinventing the wheel to some degree every single night.
Totally.
And that's what keeps it thrilling.
Yes.
And means we're not out there aping ourselves and just kind of like going through the motions. But also it keeps you like hungry and chasing. And there's even, you know, you can call it a detriment. I view it as a positive as well. But even when I've had a great show, my brain knows what wasn't great about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, you know.
Oh, I mean, afterwards, it's actually, I feel like we have like opposite situations. Like, whereas like in the shows, I try to get there and I can get there. It's just, there's a lot of things that get in the way, obviously, like we're talking about. But afterwards, I am so hyper analytical that I don't enjoy the after because I'm then rewinding and replaying the whole experience in my head of like, oh, I messed this up. I didn't do this.
Sure.
And sometimes it's like, you know, mistakes or distractions, whatever it might be. But then that part's not as fun as like, just like the, you know, move past the fact that this has all happened and you can't change it. Right. And then you're just like, then you go out and you like hang on the bus or you know, like, you know, go to a bar and like see your friends.
So this is interesting. You know, I would say that those who played in a band with me probably, you know, are like, man, just enjoy the fact that we just played and it went relatively well, or it went very well. Even.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be wrong at all. But as my career has moved towards a one-man show, as I found myself in more environments where I'm either solo or I'm doing stand-up comedy or I'm speaking, these are all solo things. And one of the reasons I've had a shift over the last couple of years, maybe in 5 years, is that if you're going to evaluate it and be hard on it, you're only being hard on yourself if you're playing solo. And that's not much fun. And that doesn't even, you know, objectively, that's not healthy to constantly just, so you kind of start to learn to be peaceful. Like, okay, like that's what we had tonight and we'll evaluate it, but we're not going to dwell on it in the same way that for many years I felt like you swim around in it.
Yeah. There's some current thinking that's been circling around my head. Perfectionism is not attainable. Yeah. And what I really think is like letting go of that and accepting the flaws and accepting that the performances are a reflection of like our nature, you know, like who we are. And that's like something that I think the audience, like they want that, you know, but they're also critical, right? Like it's kind of a mix of acceptance and like, oh, like, you know, I wonder what was going on with him today, you know, that kind of stuff. Sure. I've had people, you know, like, why is Benj smiling tonight? I was like, I'm just like, this is my resting bitch face. Like, I just look like this, you know, and that kind of stuff is always out there to be heard, you know. But I mean, you mentioned something though, like your bandmates, right? Like, so you've been through these eras. Like, how is being an artist with a band, you know, different than now taking this all on to your own shoulders with, nothing else?
Yeah, that's a great question. And something I've thought a lot about because I think being in a band is essentially a marriage of sorts, and you're really you are together so much that you have no choice but to see. You can't hide from each other in that situation. So you're going to learn everybody's buttons to push, everybody's, I don't even want to call them faults because, at this point, we just are who we are, you're going to learn their makeup and you might start to view some of what someone else has as faults because they get on your nerves. Same as in a marriage.
Yeah.
The thing about a good marriage is you develop a level of acceptance, and you say, this is who you are, and I love you. And if you didn't have these qualities about you, you wouldn't be who you are. And that's something that we can do with our spouses if we're very lucky.
Yeah.
With our best friends or family members if we're very lucky. To do that with multiple people who you don't have to stay married to.
Yeah.
So, and I'm just going to say this, money becomes the glue.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Money, it's not enough of glue. Yeah. But for some bands that are legendarily not fans of each other,
yeah,
it's, there's enough of a vested interest that you stick together. And the tricky thing is when there's love there and there's not quite enough glue and there's, and then it falls apart, Yeah. And sometimes people will say to me, why isn't this band member playing with you? And I feel like it feels insensitive. It feels a little like saying, why isn't your ex-wife here at the dinner party? I love that person.
Yeah.
And I'd love it if they were still here, but they're not.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
So why the hell are you asking me this question?
Yeah, totally. That's like, you're the greatest at this. And also, who else is really great?
Yeah, I mean, it took me years, and then I played in other bands where I didn't have the closeness that I had with my first band. And that was hard too, and I had to learn to play with people who I don't think loved me. They were just very good musicians.
Yeah.
And I'm such a sensitive person that being on stage with that energy would throw me off. And then I thought I won't do it. Now I'm peaceful with all of this.
Yeah.
I'm peaceful with what is and what is not. And I still get up there and rock. But, the reality is that my business, I can control it. And it makes a lot more sense for me to be solo most of the time. And I embrace that.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. Doesn't mean I don't enjoy rocking and rolling once in a while, but it's not it's not a muscle I need to use in the same way. And it's very different. It's, you carry the weight, but I also reap the benefits of it. If something goes right, I know that I did it.
Yeah.
There's nobody saying, I don't like this aspect of you.
Right.
But when you're down and you feel bad, there's also no one there to pick you up as you can do in a band.
Yeah. Well, what I want to go to is like the breakup of the Sixers when clearly I was, there before, during, and after, and I always wondered about how you took that because it was never a topic of conversation of like, let's get into how it happened exactly or what happened or who kind of initiated what. But I'm really curious, it
wasn't me.
Okay.
Let's just say that.
It wasn't you. But so that leads to, how did you feel about it? And were you okay with that? Because, to me, it was like watching, if you have your group of friends and then you have your other group of friends and then all of a sudden you can't hang out with everybody anymore. And
it's a divorce.
Yeah.
It's so, I mean, I don't want to say that and make anybody who's been through the pain of a divorce feel like I'm making light of that. But it's very similar, in many aspects. Okay, in that there's still love, and there was a lot of love at the point of separation, and the point of separation was actually handled well.
Okay. On your part?
It was. Well, I like to think on my part, but I don't. But when some of the guys said, like, I don't think I can do this any longer. I mean, I was heartbroken, and I'm still heartbroken, but I understand that.
Okay.
And we had gotten to an interesting place where there was a lot of good happening.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, man, you hit your mid-30s, you got mouths to feed. Things change.
Things change quick.
And as the quarterback of that football team, like, I wasn't able to lead us to the results that we were hoping for. Doesn't mean it's just my responsibility, but I certainly was the leader of the operation. I made the key choices, and and the reality was I understood, and I still understand, and so I accepted it pretty quickly. And it was a relief in some ways, because I knew we were running out of runway, and I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
So I'm very
In the sense
grateful
of,
sort
like,
of for the 10 years that came after, because I think everybody has really grown in their own way and done things that they might not have done. And that's a beautiful thing. But I always thought we would sort of land back together at some point.
I mean, you still play with Boots every once
I
in a
do
while?
play. I play with Boots, and Sam just produced 4 of the songs on that new album, and we wrote them. And he plays guitar with me once in a while. And I'm an open book, but so as not to further break things that are broken, I'll just say that,
I don't want to dig into the wrong.
that the band will not be getting back together.
Yeah.
And it's not, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I'm such a, I try, I'm a person that wants to try and is very uncomfortable with, broken relationships. I always want to leave. I'm so sensitive to the people around me that if someone is feeling badly, I feel that.
Yeah.
And yet there are things that we have to accept sort of in our adult life. There are things that cannot be fixed unless there's and so that's the reality of that situation. Was we came apart, and we stayed in each other's orbits to varying degrees. And now that seems like another lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it truly was. I mean, it was well over a decade ago.
Yeah.
And with your breakup, there's the breakup of the band, but there's not necessarily a breakup of your relationships and friendships, right? Like, there's a difference there. So you still have the communication and the friendship, but it's just like everybody's done with being the band at this point.
Yeah. And I'm sure if you were to ask the other guys, you'd get,
well, they're not on the podcast.
You'd get different. I think we're all okay with it to different degrees. I now view that chapter as a wonderful, I'm so grateful for the music that we made together, for the times we had together. And I'm sure that I've rose-colored glasses on some of the hardships of it, because ultimately I'm happy with who I am today, and I like,
as it should be,
So it's like, okay, it wasn't perfect, but this is what it was.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And moving on from that, what was it like figuring out that you were going to have to reinvent yourself as an artist in order to continue being the person I know Stephen Kellogg to be?
Listen, man, I was excited to think, I think everybody's excited for a minute to go, okay, now I get to make the decisions. I don't have to consult anybody. There's a moment of you that's like, all right, I was sad, but I was excited to try that. And making that first record was sort of exciting. Ironically, all the Sixers were on that record, and the diehard Sixers fans were like, I don't know about this record. And I'm like, look at the liner notes. It's the same band that you've been, same guy writing the songs and lyrics, like same band, like, but people's heads, what. Now, to be fair, and without throwing shade, I was pretty unclear on who I was going to be. And I had some very rough early tours where I really musically, That was not together.
Uh-huh.
And it really, I've been making, I mean, that was a big, it was a big hit to take at a time that I wish that I hadn't tried to go right back out and recreate things, because I've had to kind of, those people have gradually come back over a decade, but I definitely was like, oh, okay, that isn't for me. I'm afraid that happened with a number of the people that we made. We also weren't that huge a band. So I don't want to like romanticize who we meant a lot to the number of people we did.
I was just
but
gonna
had we
say-
gotten bigger, I'm not even sure we would have ever parted ways. That was
Yeah.
part of the problem, was we were playing in Fargo to 100 people and going, we're 2,000 shows in,
I get it. Yeah, I had a different experience with that many shows, obviously, but your track, as far as like having a very high quality relationship with your audience, was always very inspiring to me, because my history of playing with OAR, we'd have a strong relationship, but the people we'd play with didn't always have people who knew all their songs and were coming out and standing in front of our audience to see the band before us. And then like a good majority of people often would leave after you performed because they were there for you, which speaks volumes, I think, for the level of love and dedication and connection that you had with your audience and still have.
Yeah.
But that change, driving people away, I mean, when that happens, do you question like if you should continue? Like, were there moments of like in that?
I just sat around going like, what else can I do with my life? And my wife was a great friend during this period, because in my frustration, I'd say, I'm going to go straight. I'm going to get a desk job, as though anybody's trying to offer me a desk job.
Right. Like, what does this thing
right?
Yeah.
As though the world is like, oh, we lost it. It's like, look, you make art because you can't do anything else. There's no other reason that people do this job. You do it because you're so called to do it. It's such a calling. And that's and I'm grateful for that, because I would have gotten out if someone laid out, here's a ton of money to do this traditional thing. I mean, but nobody's doing that. The opportunities kept coming up. And right around that time when my band was bombing here, I got invited to do a TED Talk, which went very well and led to a lot of speaking things. I got signed in Europe, which was crazy. So I started going to Europe and touring with Gregory Alan Isaacoff and Josh Ritter, and having this buzz and credibility in Europe, where I was playing solo, that while things were sort of collapsing for me in the US, that was going well. And then as Europe kind of lost its foothold a little bit and things got like, the way they were, the US started to pick back up, and I started making music with Boots again. And Boots is like one of my soulmates musically, like when he's with me on stage, it's different for me. And his drumming, his singing, his musicality, and having him back in my life right around, the time that I wrote a book and my music got strong again. It got good again, and it got clear again who I was. And all those things, that was 6-7 years ago. So then that picked up, and I made it through. But there were some dark days in there.
For sure.
And if I had options, I would have taken it. But I had kids, and I had to keep earning a living. And the more that I could be myself, the better things got and the better things felt. The more I just allowed my audience to just see like, I'm a little bit of a mess, but this is what I want, and I expect you to listen when I'm talking. I'm a high maintenance.
Pay attention to me no matter
I'm as much of a diva as an Americana
but like
songwriter's allowed to be,
Yeah, well, and you, but that's who you are, and you've always been like that, And I admire also just like the way you are like that, because it's not the diva that's like a dick. It's the diva who knows who they are and is unabashedly themselves. And I think it's like
all we can be.
The world needs more of that, right? And I mean, from that though, like the SK Family Barbecue, and it's like you're inviting people into your life, which is not the case with a lot of the art and music that's being released right now. There's a literal screen between the listeners and the person making it.
Sure.
right? And I think the ability and that as a function of the connection is becoming lost in some capacity. I don't think it's a blanket statement, but I think that in music, right, like it's like there's separation now, in ways that there weren't before, especially with, like it's really hard to build up a touring career. It's expensive, it's physically demanding, and it's time consuming.
It's a different animal. It's a different animal than it was when we were starting out. And thank goodness for me, because I don't know if I would have been able to. I don't know if I'd have a career if I.
Like in this era.
Yeah, it was. I can't I might have had a bigger career if I had come out in like the mid '70s when like Dan Fogelberg had number one hits and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that might have been a good era for me, but. Other than that, I think the time when I got to go and see
Fogelberg as like the button.
It's like Jim Croce was a rock star at those times. And I'm like, I could have done that. That I could have handled. Yeah. But no, I mean, you use the word connection.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't have any judgment about what's happening today.
Oh yeah.
Because, and I'm not saying you do either.
Yeah.
Because if something's connecting, really connecting, like then that's great. That's if you are and you have it connecting,
and it's meaningful to the person, the listener, right?
But you go, what is it that I do? What does OAR do? What does Stephen Kellogg do? And some of my some of the art that I'm the least happy with having made in my entire career came when I was trying to do what other people felt I should do. In pursuit of growth or whatever, I would try things. I would try on personas or ways of singing or music or songs about this. You chase things. I think that more the Rick Rubin mindset of drill down and be the most high-def version of who you are.
Yes.
And that's the best you have to offer. And that might not be Bono and U2.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. Like you can accept. I've seen a lot of artists who sort of have built careers not entirely on who they are, and kind of they seem uncomfortable with it. Yeah. The one thing I'll say, I'd like to be reaching more people than I am. That's always the pursuit. I still have ambition, but I am much more myself than I was when we started out.
Yeah,
I walked on every stage at every OAR show, terrified people wouldn't like me, and that audience embraced me in a way that I'm so grateful for and has meant so much to my career.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like, boy, it feels good 25 years later to be able to be comfortable in your own skin, right? Like that feels healthier.
It is. I think there's no doubt about that, because what are you supposed to do? Like live your whole life, personifying something else. And then what you get to be like 60 years old, and it's like you forget, or you never actually have been who you are.
Sure.
In all your years, and then you're at the end, and whatever. Like,
it's strange and uncomfortable.
But is it a learning, or is it like a comfort zone? That
some of it's middle age, I think. I think arriving at middle age is, it's a nicer. But I also feel like I was born to be middle aged. Like this feels like my favorite moment of life.
Like our best versions of ourselves.
So far, hopefully it gets better. I mean, I could use some improvements for sure. I don't know, but
I hear you on that.
But if I'd had the presence of mind in those moments, we could have done. There were some big opportunities in that way. That said, and my dad said this to me a few nights ago, and I appreciate it. He said, like, if one of those songs had hit bigger for you than they did, or if you had, if things had gone differently, I really don't think you would have written a book. I don't think you would be doing stand-up. I don't think you would be representing the brand that you are, which is my life is a lot like the people that listen to me.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
Like I have the same struggles.
Yeah.
Emotionally, financially, like I'm an artist, but like I'm a working class artist.
100%. I get it. Yeah.
And that's sort of maybe the best version of what I have to offer. And I'm not sure I had that in me to the same extent back then.
Okay.
And so it's like I had to go through this. And now I'm like saying to the universe, like, okay, you've tested me.
Yeah.
You can make it a little easier now.
Yeah.
I'm ready for whatever, don't worry. I won't lose my roots.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be other tests, right? Like we're not done with that in our life.
Does not seem so. No.
Yeah. So, but like, okay, so I see the pattern here of like the shifts happening in big moments. When your family started growing, I want to talk about how you took continuing to be an artist while, first daughter's born, second daughter's born, third, fourth, like, are there moments in there where you're doing math, you're thinking about not only finances, but time, and trying to wonder about if you should continue with music or, like, I don't even know what the other thing is, but like, how did you approach that? And like, also I want to know, like, if it's not too much to ask, but in your relationship with Kirsten, like she's, I know how much you love her and would, whatever she would need, like you would, yeah, I know you are. And I think that's fantastic. And I feel the same way about my wife. I learned that from you. So yeah. So like, I mean, were there moments where like you and her had to like actively choose to continue, pushing for this and going for it? Or is it a different, type of like thought process?
So there's a bunch of layers in there, to what you're talking about, and, on the one hand, there's the math you're talking about. And, as it goes on and you're like, okay, I've got responsibility to these children, to my spouse, and then also to the people that you work with. And you're going like, we've got to figure something out. So there's a lot of pressure.
Yes.
Which is not always something that has helped me make better art. I think probably for some people, great stuff comes out of pressure cookers. I'm not sure that's for me, that would hold true. But
okay.
I probably spent more time thinking about the wrong things. I spent a lot of time thinking about finances and probably not enough thinking about time.
Yeah.
And when I reflect on those early days, I mean, I was home, I think 75 days the first year my daughter was born, That's not ideal. And that hurts me a little to consider. But at that moment, those decisions felt right, Yeah. And the ironic thing is, I have a great relationship with my oldest daughter, It didn't, and so who's to say, it's a gut call always, like time, finances, and all that worrying about the finances didn't really change what was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
It worked out.
Yeah.
That's all that really matters. How much money do you need? Like, enough.
Yeah. If you
but when you get enough, you're still going to want more.
Yeah.
Everybody's always going to want
the crutch of what
always going to want more. You just keep upping the ante, And so the reality is, I wish I had spent a little more time thinking, I wish I'd focused a little more on what's actually important, which is time, time spent. How do you do that quality time, And for Kirsten, I happened to have married, when you married the right person, they're there with you, but they're on their journey and you're on your journey. And that's hard reality that we don't like to talk about out loud, but we are all alone. We're all going to die alone. We're living our own journey. And if you're lucky enough to find somebody to go through it with, how lucky are you? That's the greatest.
Yeah.
But you can't make their pain go away any more than they can make your pain go away. So we supported each other. We strategized together, but she was never going to be the one to say, you should hang it up. Like, you say that to somebody that you're with, like, they need to come to that decision for themselves.
Yeah.
I do not think that's okay. I don't think you tell somebody else, which if they ask you, what do you think I should do?
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah. But you don't bring it up.
There was never pressure from her. In fact, there was one moment where we were maybe going to have to move. I get emotional thinking about that moment because it was like we needed a break so badly. And I remember a TV show used our song. It's like the only time that's ever happened. It's happened so few times.
And it happened like when you needed it.
It happened when I needed it. It happened to be a song I wrote 100% of.
Wow.
And I got half of it because the label owned the other half. But it was like enough to pay everything. It was like the universe was like, no, don't. And I was like, okay.
Cool.
So I made a payment that I needed to make for the house. I bought the new van we needed. I took care of some credit card stuff. And it was like, it's a wonderful life, when they're like, we've got $2. Like, that's all you really need. You just need to be able to get to that point. And it's cool. I'm super pro money, but but that's the reality. If you get to make your art, you do it. And with my kids, I learned to start telling them, you guys, I love you and I don't want to be away from you, but I feel like I have something I got to do here. And I hope you'll understand when you grow up, and I hope you'll follow the things that you need to say.
Yeah.
And now that they're doing that, it's hard to let them go. But I know that I have to. It's so hard to see my daughter go, yeah, I'll see you in 2 months. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is totally shifted.
Right. Like instead of you leaving for tour,
yeah,
she is now leaving for college and other,
And I'm like, oh, okay. You think you'll be around? She feels my slight disappointment, just like I would feel the sight of her, running after the van when I pull away. We'll never leave.
Oh, that mental image right there. Yeah.
I remember Adeline packing herself into a suitcase. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, Jessica, who was my tour manager at the time, she said, Jessica said I could go if I packed. And I was like, Jessica's a very bad person. Oh my God, my heart still breaks at thinking of that, And so that's how we handled the family. And now that I'm home, I try not to more. I'm still on the road a ton, but I try not to view that as our careers are just our careers.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to be, you don't not play in the NFL just because you're not going to be Tom Brady, right?
Yeah.
Just because you're not going to be the best that ever lived. You don't say, well, I guess I ought to get out of it. And why didn't somebody tell me that when I was 30,
Right.
Why am I just picking this up now? I get to play in the NFL. We get to do this last level, but it doesn't have to be your whole identity. And so now I have to accept I took some shots that did not come in. There are some things I tried to do, tried as hard as I know how, gave it everything I have, all my intelligence, energy, work ethic, and I didn't get it. Certain things I did not get. But look at me, I'm still getting to play the game and I'm getting to hang it. Look who my friends are. This is fun. So let's play the game.
Yeah. Still being able to get in there and actually do what we love is more than half the battle. You know what I mean? To just have the opportunity to continue putting yourself out there.
You do it at a damn high level. I mean, you play Madison Square Garden. I mean,
I haven't done that in 15 years, and all that, but I have done it. Yes. But I guess what I'm saying is also the arc of our band's career is just keep going. And I would play 300 days. No, I'm not about that. I probably play about 200 days a year and love every show, but it's unrealistic as a business to operate in that manner.
Sure.
And so we've learned, where the sweet spot is, where we can continue to be relevant and grow, and there's interest on the audience side, but you also don't overdo it, and
you guys have done a great job with that. And I admire, I have also seen all the phases of you guys, and I know what you had to go through to get to that spot.
Yeah.
You had early success. You had a different set of challenges, but they were real.
Yeah.
And I think, as an outsider who's a little bit inside, I think you guys are the, you guys are the greatest. I always think of when we did the Garden of Dreams at the Beacon.
Yeah.
And they had me go out with OAR to do the press junket. and they're asked someone someone who was less familiar with the band, put the mic in my face. And I just answered the question as though I'm the next day it's like, Stephen Kellogg of OAR says, I loved that.
There's proof. You're part of the circle. You're in it, man.
No,
I love it. We've always been really lucky that you're alongside us on this journey, whatever it is, whatever it's going, to be like in the future as it continues to change. With changing for you, I've admired how you've continually found new ways to express yourself, from starting your career as an author and finding your voice on your own, doing your own shows. And I mean, then I got to bring one specific up, and I have some questions about that I want to ask you. In Ocean City last year, Ocean's Calling was like, we finally get to do this festival we've been trying to put together. And thankfully, the weather gods agreed this past year. And I found out the night before the festival, you had strategically booked a show at a local venue, which I was super happy about because I got to catch a Stephen Kellogg show.
Yeah.
And you walked me in the back door with some of the other guys, and it was super fun to be there. Get in the back, get in there, and I'm like the last guy to find out you're playing, but apparently like everybody who's at the festival definitely knew, and the place is packed. It was super fun. I'm having a good time. Like I'm in the audience with a bunch of our audience members, and we're talking to all these people who we're usually not so close with, but I had a great time there. And, it was one of those shows where people are conversing during the performance.
It was chatty.
It was a chatty crowd. Some of that may be due to the fact that
you guys
we were there and we were talking to people, and if that was rude in any way, I do apologize. However, I had no choice in order to not be rude to these other people. So my thing is, it's loud. You exit the building. You walk out the back door you snuck me in. And at that point, I'm by the front door, near the bar, of course. And I see you walk in, and I'm like, what is he doing? And I thought you were done, right? And you walk in, and you get the whole place to be quiet.
Yeah.
You tell her, this is, like, I'm going to do one more song. And you don't use the microphone.
Yeah.
You're not plugged in. And you tell this beautiful story that I'm going to include when I air this.
Sure.
Because I was so moved, and I was fortunately like able to film it, just on a little, iPhone or whatever. And ironically, these little iPhones are recording this. But, you told the story of Don Quixote and how Sancho cheered him back on to actually get to like being his true self and not give up. And
Don only loses heart. Don is steadfast on his mission.
Yeah.
For like 926 pages. And it's a little long-winded, but then at the 11th hour, Don Quixote loses heart.
Yeah. And
his best pal, Sancho, who he's been pretty hard on the entire journey, is like, you can't. No, Don. And Don's like, no, this was all a big mistake. Sancho, don't listen to me. I never knew what I was talking about. And Sancho says, no, this was not a mistake. We were living a dream, and I don't regret it.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful moment. Yeah.
And also like you likening it to yourself hit home so hard to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to let myself cry if you need to,
but that's my move.
Well, no, because this is like me coming out of all my health issues.
Yeah.
And I almost gave up.
Yeah.
I hit a point where I was in such a bad physical state, and later such a bad mental state. I almost did some dumb shit. I didn't know that I was going to get through to ever be able to make music again, to be able to travel. Like I was even wondering if I was going to walk at one point. And and when you said all that, it brought a lot home in that moment, knowing like the festival was happening. We were able to do that. I was like inspired that you're still doing it, knowing all these details we're talking about your history. And I have to say, like, you have that ability that I never want to see go away.
is to pull that feeling, from your own heart and put it out there in a way that like resonates and is real. And it's about that connection, or it's like kind of the theme, I guess, about a lot of this is like, like, why do we do that? You know what I mean? Why is that so necessary? Sure. Well, right. I mean, the essence of what you're kind of talking about there, I think that, why are we here? What are we doing? Yes, it's a job, but, that story, which was an ad lib, it's one I've done a couple of times, but it's in that moment of being in that room and not really feeling listened to, even by people who I knew are super pro, they're there because they want to be. Yeah. But it's not really what I do. Hasn't been what I do for a long time. I don't go into places and jump around and go, come on, everybody, like, listen to me, check it out. Yeah. So I walked in there knowing, like, I have this thing that I want to give you. It's this gift that I want to give you. And you can do anything you want. You can go to any bar you want to hang out and have drinks, or listen to, if you want to dance, I'm sure a lot of people do that better. But the gift that I have to give, this is sort of the growing up and realizing, like, what do I have to give? It's these words, it's this perspective, it's these thoughts. These are ideas that have had to bleed for. And so I walk into a room and I know now that it's better to connect for real with one person in that room than to keep everybody status quo. So even if it is my best friends having a chat, or it's a group of people with a smile on their face, that's not why I'm here, And I took that gig, but I also didn't exactly know what I was walking into. And when it was there, I played it. I'm a big boy. I know there's bigger problems. But as the show was about to end, I also thought to myself, subconsciously, I'm not having a lot of the conscious thoughts. I just thought, like, let me not walk out of here not having said what needs to be said. And what needs to be said is, okay, you guys need to shut up and hear one thing I'm doing tonight. Yeah. And somebody in this room came here in pain and might have a smile on their face that isn't real, or they're alone, or they're going through something. And this is my last chance to be that brave person that I wish I was when I was 25 and 30 and 35 and 40 and 45. Now I'm 47. And I've finally gotten there where I'm like, you don't have to like me. I don't really give a shit, to tell you. So what are you going to take from me that hasn't already been taken? But if you shut up long enough that you can actually hear what I'm going to give you, it just might be what you need. Yeah. And the crazy thing about all that is that I think I also said I wasn't born for this shit when I finished the song, and everybody's going, yeah. And I'm like, I handed the guitar to my tour manager, walked out, said I wasn't born for this shit. And the same venue reached out this year, and they're like, that was so great last year. Can you do this again? And they like want you to put on that same show. They want it. And the crazy thing is, it's like, I would probably do it again, because I walked out of there like, well, that felt like my heart was on fire. Yeah. And I knew that we had connected, even if it was this weird, ugly, clunky show that is not like the manicured concert I'm putting on at theaters nowadays. Yes. And so that was cool. It was all cool. It was all good. But for me to get to that place where I'm banging on a bar and saying, give me your attention for just 5 minutes. Yeah. And you'll see the magic of what Stephen Kellogg can do. Yes. But if I can't get that, I'm useless. Go hire somebody else that can just play, a Jack Johnson cover in the back or whatever. There's no point of having me there. Yeah. And I've got better shit to do. Yep. Yep. And that's kind of, so I'm not like angry at people for having a good time. I'm just like, if you want to get anything for this experience, you're going to need to give me your attention and show me a little respect.
100%.
And when they did, we obviously had that big moment. It was great. I'm glad you had a good moment.
It was so powerful. I mean, not just to me, but like people after you left were like, oh my God. And the funny thing is, I think too, about that is like, it's like the cognizance of like what you were doing on stage, which was like real talent, real art, real music. And like you're putting your heart out there, like they missed it, you know.
Totally.
Like, and there was like they.
This is the story of my life a little bit, but I think it's a metaphor also for why I'm doing this. You know, is because I want to be heard and I want these voices to be heard, and I think that like the power of actually like listening and hearing the soul of someone and like what they are is something for people to, you know, it's you can enjoy it, but it's also you learn from it, you know. And I think there's a lot in your experience as an artist that is relatable to a lot of people trying to find their way in their careers or to, you know, lead their family through these challenging times of, you know, the economy's fucked up. We're like in this election year from hell. You know, there's just so many things that are like the world climate, you know, climate as well as, you know, like wars all over. Snowed in like 3 years.
Yeah. Oh, man. I mean,
is this okay?
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. I mean, they're building a seawall downtown from here. You know what I mean? Because they're worried about like, you know, the ocean like coming over the walls of the city. And where I live, there's, you know, floods and earthquakes and landslides and all that stuff. And I mean, granted, those are somewhat natural phenomenon that have happened for the past, you know, hundreds of millions of years or whatever.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, but hopefully it's not like worse than that, right? But I guess what I'm saying is there's a beauty in connecting with people, and it's lost that people around have so much to offer with just a little bit of listening, and you can gain so much, you know, being able to get within someone's perspective and to really take them, you know, for who they are. And what I want to encourage is like that these types of conversations are right outside people's door. You know, like they can go to their neighbor who might have a Trump sticker on their lawn and they're a Biden guy or whatever, and they could actually find a lot to talk about that they would enjoy. Instead, there's division and there's polarization and there's hate. And I'm broken up by that because, you know, for me, being here in America, like I am the product of generations of my family who somehow, you know, put me in a position to benefit from all their toil, you know, and now I'm here and the dream they had to kind of put someone in existence, you know, that could like enjoy the world for, you know, or for what America was like supposed to be. Yeah. It's like, it's vapid to me right now. It's not there. And so this is my way of trying to like, you know, like usher in a little bit of good news and sort of like what I would like the world to maybe start to embody in some form. And, you know, these stories that you're telling are exactly like the heart of that, you know, so I'm really grateful you're telling them.
I mean, to what you just said, allowing your leaders, if they're the ones that set the tone that makes you feel like you can connect with someone who has a difference of opinion than you or whatever, you know, we need good leaders who want to keep that tone well. And I'm a big believer in we need leaders who we will allow to be imperfect. Mm-hmm. If you're living in a culture where you say one wrong thing and you're canceled out, you know, or where you're not allowed to be somebody who you know just is highly flawed in whatever ways. You know, this guy screwed his taxes up 4 years ago. This woman had an affair with this. If you dig through everybody's trash and skewer them, nobody's going to want to lead that you're going to want to lead. Yeah, you know, totally. And that's a hard thing, you know. And we do need that. And I think these conversations, you know, I get the same buzz from this conversation that I get from a show.
Good.
This is, to me, this is the exchange of ideas, which is basically what I'm in the show for now, that same connection. So that's interesting too, because back then I didn't know that about this, but now it's like when I'm doing this, this is in some ways more exciting than a show, because for a show you'd have to do a vocal warm up.
Mhm.
Here we're just speaking honestly.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
each other.
And I mean, I want to talk about your new show that you're doing.
Yeah.
It's like a complete departure from everything you've done before in a way that you're involving. I mean, you've always been funny as hell between
It's a
songs,
mix
but
of
it's like,
things,
yeah,
yeah.
but now you're like actually focusing on it actually being comedy, which I admire because I do think you're extremely funny when you want to be, and I know
Yeah.
sometimes like when you're being funny, sometimes it's, like deflection or sometimes self-deprecation. I would say, I've heard that from you, but like, tell me how you got there, that you were accepting, because to me it a little bit is sort of like as far as like mental health and wellness goes, to bring it to that, is like you're like accepting these parts of yourself as a person and as an artist, and you're like I need to evolve into sharing the most truest, honest person that I am,
Yeah.
in order to really connect in the deepest, most effective way.
Sure.
Is it like along those lines? Am I crazy? Or
No,
tell
I
me
mean, of course, yeah. I think you're right on it. I mean, and it goes back to being comfortable in your own skin. But I think, fear of failure will pretty much kill any good creative endeavor if you let it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always the concern. And yet for me, I had a moment a few years ago where I thought, okay, I'm doing something that I've always wanted to do. I was on a tour and it was playing to a lot of people, and there just was no reason to be unhappy. And yet I felt unhappy, like in my soul. And I thought, okay, why? I have a family thing is good. Things got friends, why should I? It almost felt disrespectful to people who have larger scale problems.
Yeah.
And
Like that in itself is a whole thing that like, we put on ourselves, right? Is like pain is pain, like if
right. I've had to be told that because I'm like, I know, but I mean, I want to minimize my own pain because I do feel like you just said, you feel that I was given a running start in life. I had loving parents and I had, I was given some opportunities to get a good education.
But it doesn't discount that your pain hurts.
It doesn't. And that's something that I'm like, kind of accepted.
Right. But like, I'm sorry to derail your point,
No,
but that's also something I want to highlight in this podcast, is like people who have pain should address their pain.
Yeah.
And it's like, just because you might be a privileged person doesn't mean you shouldn't take it seriously and deal with it. So sorry to
No, it's a really important, and it came as a shock to me the first time my therapist friend was like, Stephen, like this is real, what you're feeling too. And I'm like, yeah. But and they're like, no, pause, period. This is this is a real thing. And that, and so that's an important point and a good one to stop for.
Okay.
But, I thought about it and I thought, well, what do I want to be doing here? Because time is not guaranteed. I mean, as I mentioned in the beginning of this conversation, I just lost an old friend, and part of what I started thinking about was, well, what do I love? What's working? What does feel good? Storytelling feels good. Not having to run decisions by a million people feels good. So like, it began a process of organizing my current professional business and looking at my life and going, what would be the ideal? And now let's aim at that. Instead of just letting life happen to you, you try to like lean into it more.
Yeah.
And so I started really highlighting the fact that it's a storyteller and there is humor in that.
Yeah.
But I enjoy playing heavier, weightier songs. I don't really feel like drinking songs are quite as fun with one guy singing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do them, but it's not like, it doesn't feel as like, if I was up with the band, I'd be like, let's rock that, But it's like right now, at this moment in my life, with the opportunities, with who's the players that are here, it feels like I'm always having to hustle that together. Whereas this other thing feels very natural. So I started leaning into that. And then my friend came out and saw the show, and he runs a New York comedy club here in New York. And he said, you've got to come down and just do some stand-up. And I said, that is the craziest, most audacious idea. No, thank you. And then the next time I saw him at a show, he's like, I'm not going to take no for an answer.
Good.
He kept hitting me up. One night I am seeing the Neil Diamond musical, and the guy playing Neil Diamond is someone I've written songs with, Nick Fradiani. He's great.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there, and the New York Comedy Club is sitting in the row behind me. Universe threw it in. And he said, let's go get a beer. We went out with our girls after. And, I said, all right, fine, I'll do it. He said, just 15 minutes, just go give it a swing. And that was May of last year. It was like less than a year ago.
Yeah.
But I did it, and it was like, it felt like that first show.
Really?
Where I just felt like I was just like in it, and it felt good. And Kirsten said, like, it's really sexy. You're going to go do this. I'm like, you think so? Like, to have my wife feel, anytime your wife tells you doing something sexy, I'm like, how do I repeat that experience? And so I started doing like one a month. I'd go to different comedy clubs and do 15 minutes or whatever.
Sure.
And I was like, it's one thing to make people laugh when you are in between songs and they're pleasantly surprised. It's different to go into a comedy club where people are a little more like, you better be funny, man.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's okay. It's another lesson in like, it doesn't get you. I watched a lot of comics bomb and be totally fine when they came off.
Really?
Like, you get credit just for playing the game.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I thought that was cool, and it was fun to be doing something new and to be doing something that not everybody can do. And so that led me to the one-man show that I just did between November and February of this year. I went out, and it started with a monologue, and then it had a little bit of related music, and then I would do about a half hour stand-up in the middle, and then finish with some moments. And it was closer to a play, but I still would change the songs and the jokes every night.
Yeah.
But the format was the same every night, and the monologue stayed the same every night.
Okay.
And I thought that was just about the most fun. I mean, it was the funnest tour I had such a good time, and it feels fun to be trying new things, and we'll see where it's going.
Yeah. No, thank you for getting into that, because I was really curious how that evolved. I think, knowing you, it makes sense, but there's always a story, right? There's always like reasons and moments and like things that put you in the position to do that. And I think the universe was talking a little bit through the guy from the comedy club who kept showing up and asking you.
That was very serendipitous, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not just being self-deprecating to be self-deprecating, but the reality is there's a lot of music these days.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who sing very well, who play guitar very well. There's who write songs very well. Totally. And I'm, I'm looking at all that and being like, man, I've been trying very hard at those things for a long time. And I'm in this place, and this is a good place, but I still have ambition to reach more people. How am I going to do that?
Yeah.
And this avenue started to be a place where it was like, well, this is less crowded here.
Yeah.
And this maybe speaks to the parts of the job that I really love the most. And audaciously, you just kind of, I said, maybe this will work to Mark Roberge when we were out playing some shows together.
Uh-huh.
And he loved that. He said, maybe this will work. You got to write that down. And so I write on my set lists, maybe this will work, when you're going out and trying this new thing at 47,
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that you are trying new things at 47. and I hope you continue to, because honestly, like, we can never do ourselves a disservice if we're doing what we really need, and what art we really want to create. I think as human beings, like, we want to emote, we want to put that stuff out there, at least like human beings like us, like we want to find the connection. And you got to like manage it within the realm of your life. There's so much to figuring out what you can do to honor yourself, as well as, like, bring it home, like, and like keep your head up high when you go home, and know that you're, moving forward with integrity.
Yeah.
And like, you can be proud of who you are. And like, you want your kids to be proud of who you are, and to be able to be like, my dad's doing that,
just like we were talking about before with your spouse, and having, you're two, I don't have the metaphor right now, but you're sharing space with another person, but you're not the same. You're not the one, you are two things. So taking care of yourself is going to make you a better husband, a better father, a better friend, a better bandmate. And I guess that's it can be hard to remember when you're in a dark place, like both of us have sort of chatted about in this conversation.
Yeah.
It can feel especially hard, but there's some wisdom in that. You got to just get under the hood and figure out what's going on with you, why you're here, and how do you get some help to get to a better place so you can be the person that you want to be for everybody around you.
Yeah. With that, I mean, is that Kirsten for you? Like, is it always come back to like how you can reflect on yourself through her?
I have a few, but my, Kirsten has been that. She's me being home more. Quite honestly, sometimes she's like, "When do you think you're gonna head out again?" My wife's like, "This wasn't part of the deal that you'd be home so much."
But I like my time to myself,
Yeah, she's a very independent person, and even me learning to, I look at her a little bit like Mickey Mouse if I'm like a Disney enthusiast.
Okay.
I was like, there she is. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I think it's painful to me sometimes to admit that I am probably a little overbearing in that capacity. But I think in doing so, it only improves the relationship because you go, okay, this is self-awareness, and all right, let me make sure that she's carving out enough space to be who she needs to be, and make sure her needs are met. And so Kirsten is that person in my world. But I have a few. My manager, Jessica, is that person too.
She's amazing.
We've been on this ride together all that time too, in one way or another.
I remember when she was out on the road, and it's really cool that, you guys have stuck it out and she's still,
she was a tour manager. I had no idea what to do on that first tour.
Yeah.
I mean, we went out with you guys. We were so new, so green. And now that she is a manager, she has a great business, and it's fun to take the journey with someone,
Yeah. And I mean, the thing about her, like most foundationally to me and for you, is that she cares.
Yeah.
And she really loves being, I think, along for the ride, as well as helping support you as you go through all this, like that she's gone through the ups and downs and different facets of it.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. And I would say that in a band or a marriage or anything, that's your baseline. You really do have to care. You can find people in your life where you guys can make some money together or whatever, and you go, okay. But if there isn't that fundamental baseline of caring, it's always going to be sick. There's always going to be something wrong with the foundation, and it'll never be a peaceful relationship. And I think sometimes the allure of stability or not being so alone, makes you look the other way in a relationship. Maybe it's a situation where someone doesn't treat you in a way that feels okay to you, but you put up with it because you're worried. The fear of loneliness is so great. Or you do things for the money that really do hurt your soul. And I'm a little melodramatic with that. If I do a show that doesn't fit the mark, it can screw me up for months.
Okay.
And then I can't go do the job that I'm here to do. So I got to be very careful about how I do that, because I am a highly sensitive person, So it's just something, and so that baseline has to be there. And if it's not, it takes a lot of courage to walk away from those relationships. But I think that the more that you do walk away and fill your life with relationships where that baseline of caring and respect is part of it, those are the people who you go, oh, they seem to have it figured out.
Yeah. And I think that's like also relatable fact for generally, like who you surround yourself with, not just that you're in a band, but being mindful of, your support network, being mindful of like those that are actively taking your well-being into consideration, because it's real easy to have friends that aren't there for the right reasons, and you can get boosted up by that, but it's not necessarily healthy. And I think I agree. It's a tricky thing these days because like some of it, is influenced by, social media stuff. You want to get your picture with this guy or be part of this post or whatever it is. And that enters our world as artists, but it also, I think, is a very relevant topic of, how people feel good about themselves. And I think it's just something to be aware of as much as like maybe analytical of as like as people hopefully are listening to this and taking in about their own lives, thinking about, is my network really supportive of me living healthy and like
what ingredients are in the soup? Soup's never going to be good if the ingredients are spoiled.
Yeah, totally. You use some bad lettuce.
Yeah,
you can need some good onion. You know what I'm saying?
Put some expensive black truffles in, but if you don't like the taste of black truffles, it is not going to be a good soup.
Pour that out here. No, I'm with
you here all day. Songwriting metaphors.
Songwriting metaphors can happen. I should bring marketing for ours from this side of the conversation. But no, I mean, I'm really grateful that you're such an open, honest person, because I think there's like a lack of authenticity with some people that like you don't know what you're going to get. There's people out there who we both talked with who aren't really genuine human beings.
Sure.
And it's just like not allowed to talk about
heard.
So there's just a real respect on my end to be able to have a conversation like this, because I learn as I go, and it's like I've been missing from a lot of my personal relationships for a few years because of my health issues, and I also haven't been in a place where I could like really process a lot of things going on for me. But now I'm in this moment where I really want to reflect and like learn what my friends have been going through and how their lives have changed and all this. And, like, I mean, I was at your wedding, all the way to like fast forward these years later. I'm really happy that we've been able to remain friends, but that throughout this time, I keep learning from you, and our relationships grown so much over the years.
I feel the same way.
It's really awesome, and I'm honored that you're sharing all this like through this effort I'm doing with What Could Be Bad. I want it to help people, and I want people to learn and be inspired, and there's no one more inspiring than you, because you're like you don't give up, and it. But I mean, it's like, but it's all heart and it's all love for what you do. And there's a bridge between like where the world is now and where I'd like to see it, and there's only so many people who can kind of show the way of that I know and can have a conversation like this. Like that's how we get there. And I hope more people listen to your music, listen to your stories, come to your shows, read your book. I think it will help them, and make their lives better on a daily basis. There's so much depth to your stories.
Well, this is great.
To touch back on it, I'm wondering, is there something that was deeply challenging or traumatic for you in your lifetime? Something you went through that was, a trial that you had to figure out how to deal with and learn to manage? And like, what was it? How'd you do that? And are you still dealing with it? And if so, what do you have going on that's like something you're comfortable sharing that would be along those lines?
Well, I'm comfortable sharing anything, as long as it's just about me. I'm comfortable sharing anything. And I think that we kind of break a little bit here and there as we go, and we get scars that we carry around, and they don't ever go away. But if you're lucky, you do process them and you realize they're not hurting you anymore. They hurt. And if you're ripping them open all the time, they'll continue to hurt. But if you allow them to heal and just say, and look at them as factual things, then you find a way forward. And it's important to find a way forward. So, when you asked me that question, I could talk about the way that I grew up, and some of that stuff. And I could talk about, having my kids in school right down the road from Sandy Hook, and having my guitarist lose his parents to gun violence, and then having to be tolerant with somebody who won't even entertain that conversation. That takes a minute.
Yeah.
I could talk about my personal heartbreaks with people whose view of me, whose narratives that they've written about me are so contrary to how I would like to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Any one of those things breaks you. But I think I would answer this question by sharing this Leonard Cohen lyric that I stumbled on recently, which is, if you don't become the ocean, you'll be seasick every day.
Hmm.
So if you don't become the ocean with all its tides and depths and moods, you'll always feel seasick. You'll always feel like life is being done to you.
Yeah.
And the reality is, even in a very fortunate life, there's going to be a lot of pain. There's going to be a lot of suffering. And so we need to, in some ways, and my thing that I work on is to take these things, these moments of pain, the storms, and to allow them to happen and to feel them and to know that this is my life. I can't jump into someone else's life.
Yeah.
This is part of it.
Yeah.
The only way is to just roll with it and believe that the sun will shine again. That's helped me a lot, that metaphor, that lyric. And when life is really storming down, or these moments of pain or feeling like a scar could open up again, I just remind myself, be the ocean, be the ocean. And that's all you can do. And that's the most peace that a person can have. So that's how I'd answer that question.
That's perfect and beautiful. Good. In a world full of flaws and imperfection, that was perfect response.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. The ocean to me is it's been a magnet. Any water, but the ocean in particular, I move my life to live by it, and it's the place I go every morning to breathe and create space for myself after my health issues. It became routine to walk to that and be like I actually think like that of, when I'm breathing and there's no one around, no one in the neighborhood's awake, and you're just hearing the waves and the water's moving the rocks and the shore. I feel completely in tune with the bigger picture.
Connection.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I deeply appreciate what you just said.
Good.
As much as all of what we've just been able to share.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you did this.
Yeah.
Thank you, my
It's an
friend.
honor, man.
Oh, dude, the honor is all mine.
When do we get to hug?
We can hug anytime. Let's hug now, and then I'll do the sign off. I love you, bro.
I love you too.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of What Could Be Bad, and we'll be back next week for some more goodness. See you there.
Somebody told me one night, they said the best book ever written is Don Quixote. It is not the best book ever written. It's like 900 pages. And basically, there's nothing really compelling until you get to the last 80 pages. When you get to the last 80 pages, this thing happens. Where Sancho Panza, the guy who travels around with adventurer Don Quixote, and Don Quixote has been punishing Sancho the whole time. He's beating him up and saying, "You're doing it wrong." And he says they're so mad. And at the end, Don Quixote gives up on his dream that he had for himself, and he says, "Sancho, I'm sorry. I blew it. I ruined it. Why did we do this?" And in that moment, Sancho Panza, his friend, looks at him and says, "No, Don Quixote, No, you don't give up on your dreams. Even if it was a big fucking shit show, you don't give up on your dreams. And you, my friends, are looking at a guy who is not giving up on a fucking dream.